"I would rather die than be yours," the Apache woman said at dawn. The first light of dawn stretched across the mountains, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and gold. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of sage and earth. In the quiet of this early hour, Nayeli walked along the narrow paths that wound through the hills near her village. She was careful with every step, mindful of the stones under her feet and the soft rustle of leaves in the morning breeze. Her tribe had taught her to move silently, to respect the land, and to understand that the mountains themselves were alive with stories of those who had walked before. Nayeli was young but wise beyond her years. She had learned from her mother and grandmother the importance of courage, patience, and loyalty. Her long black hair fell over her shoulders like a waterfall, and her dark eyes reflected both curiosity and caution. She had grown up listening to the elders' stories, tales of heroes, warriors, and women who had made choices that shaped the future of their people. Nayeli felt a quiet pride in these stories, but she also carried a sense of the burden that came with them. On this particular morning, Nayeli's attention was drawn to a figure moving in the distance. He was a man she had never seen before, dressed in clothing that seemed stiff and foreign compared to the soft, practical garments her people wore. He moved with a confidence that suggested authority, yet there was an awkwardness in the way he stepped over the rocks and roots. Nayeli stopped and watched him carefully from behind a boulder. She felt a mixture of curiosity and caution. The man's name was Captain Samuel Hayes. He had come to the region with the United States Army, assigned to explore and maintain order among the local tribes. But Hayes was not like the stories Nayeli had heard about soldiers. He did not carry an air of immediate threat. Instead, there was a thoughtful hesitancy in his movements. He paused to look at the rising sun, shading his eyes with one hand. There was a moment when he seemed almost lost, as if he were searching for something beyond the mountains. Nayeli's curiosity grew, but so did her caution. She had been taught that strangers could be dangerous, especially those who came from outside the tribe. Yet, something about this man did not immediately inspire fear. He carried himself with respect, or at least with the appearance of it. Nayeli decided to observe him for a while, hidden among the rocks, trying to understand who he was and why he was here. As Hayes moved closer to a small clearing, he stopped again. He knelt to examine the ground, running his fingers over the soil and rocks. Nayeli noticed that he seemed genuinely interested in the land, not just in what he could take from it. Perhaps he was a man who loved to learn, she thought. Still, she remained silent, hiding her presence carefully. The lessons of her ancestors reminded her that appearances could be deceiving. Trust was earned, not given. For the next few hours, Nayeli followed the man at a distance, careful not to be seen. She watched how he sketched in a small notebook, how he studied the plants and rocks, and how he paused to breathe in the scents of the morning. She realized that he was trying to understand the land, to connect with it in his own way. But Nayeli also knew that his world was very different from hers. He had not grown up in these mountains, had not learned the songs of the wind or the whispers of the trees. His presence was both a curiosity and a concern. As the sun climbed higher, Nayeli noticed that Hayes seemed to sense he was being observed. He looked around, his eyes scanning the rocks and trees, and for a brief moment their eyes met. Nayeli's heart skipped a beat. There was no hostility in his gaze, only a hint of surprise and respect. She quickly ducked behind a large rock, holding her breath. The connection was brief, but it left a mark on both of them. After a while, Hayes began to speak softly to himself, as if sharing his thoughts with the mountains. "This land, it holds so much," he said, his voice low but clear. "I wish I could understand it." Nayeli listened, intrigued by the way he spoke. There was honesty in his words, a sense of wonder and admiration for the place she had known her entire life. It was rare to hear an outsider speak with such reverence, and Nayeli felt a flicker of curiosity about the man himself. Despite her curiosity, Naeli knew she could not approach him. Her tribe valued independence and loyalty above all else. She could not allow herself to be swayed by words alone, no matter how kind or respectful they sounded. Naeli's mother had always told her that the strength of a woman lay in her ability to choose wisely, to stand firm even when the path was difficult. Naeli repeated these lessons silently to herself as she watched Hayes continue his careful exploration. Hours passed, and the morning warmth began to soften the chill in the air. Hayes seemed to notice the time and started to pack up his things. Naeli felt a strange mix of relief and disappointment. She had learned much just by observing him, but the thought of him leaving left a small emptiness in her chest. Perhaps it was the curiosity about the unknown, or the recognition that this man would now carry a memory of her land, even if he did not yet know her. Before Hayes finally turned to leave, he paused once more, looking around the clearing as if saying goodbye. Naeli held her breath, unsure if she should reveal herself. But before she could make a decision, he walked away, disappearing over the ridge. The mountains returned to their quiet rhythm, the wind rustling through the sage, the birds calling softly to one another. Naeli exhaled slowly, her heart still racing from the encounter. In the solitude that followed, Naeli reflected on the morning's events. She felt a strange mixture of emotions: curiosity, caution, admiration, and unease. She knew that her life and the life of her people was bound to the mountains and the traditions that had shaped them. Yet in that brief encounter, she had glimpsed a world beyond the hills, a world that was both tempting and dangerous. Naeli understood that the choices she would make in the future would be influenced by this moment, even if she did not yet know how. As the sun rose higher, Naeli made her way back to the village. The paths she walked were familiar, and the smells of her people's cooking and the sounds of children laughing brought comfort. She was home, yet the memory of the stranger lingered in her mind. She had seen courage in him, and perhaps in herself as well, in the way she had faced the unknown without fear. By the time she returned to her family, the village was fully awake. Elders sat outside their homes, speaking quietly to one another, while younger children ran and played. Naeli's presence was noted, and her mother called her over. Naeli smiled softly, keeping the morning's encounter to herself for now. She knew that this story was hers alone, a secret carried in the quiet spaces of her heart. That dawn, in the stillness of the mountains, Naeli understood something important. Life would present choices, some easy, some impossible. Some would require courage, others patience. But above all, she knew that her heart and mind must guide her, and that the wisdom of her people would always be her compass. And though the stranger had gone, his presence lingered in the mountains, a reminder that the world was vast and full of unknown possibilities. Naeli felt ready to face whatever came next, holding tightly to her heritage, her pride, and the quiet strength that had been passed down through generations. The mountains were her home, her protector, and now, in that first light of dawn, they also bore witness to the first chapter of a story that was just beginning. The days after that first encounter passed slowly in the mountains. Naeli carried on with her daily routines, fetching water from the stream, gathering herbs, and helping her mother with the tasks of the village. The mornings were filled with sunlight and laughter, and yet a part of her mind often drifted back to the stranger she had seen, the man who had quietly explored the mountains with such care and curiosity. She told herself that it was only curiosity, a passing thought. Still, there was something about him that had lingered. Perhaps it was the way he had moved with respect, or the way he seemed to notice details that others overlooked. Naeli had watched him study the land, touch the rocks gently, and pause to observe the plants. It was clear to her that he was different from the others she had heard about in the stories, different from those who had come before, who only sought control or possessions. One afternoon, while Naeli sat near the stream, arranging flowers she had gathered, she saw him again. Captain Samuel Hayes appeared at the edge of the clearing, hesitant but deliberate. He did not call out or rush forward. Instead, he paused and scanned the surroundings as if looking for something familiar. Naomi felt her heart quicken, yet she did not step forward. She stayed hidden behind a cluster of rocks, watching carefully. Hayes knelt by the water and dipped his hands in, bringing the cool liquid to his face. He spoke softly, not to anyone in particular. "The water here, it's clear. So different from where I've been." His words carried no demands, no expectation, only observation. Naomi's curiosity grew. She wondered what had drawn him back. Was it the mountains themselves, or was he searching for her? She could not tell, and that uncertainty made her cautious. Over the next few weeks, Hayes returned several times. Each time, Naomi observed him from a distance, studying his actions and the expressions on his face. She noticed that he often sketched the landscape in a small notebook, capturing the shapes of the mountains, the flow of the rivers, and the patterns of plants and stones. His drawings were careful and thoughtful, and they spoke of a man who appreciated the world he was in. Naomi began to feel a strange connection with him, not friendship but understanding. Despite her growing curiosity, Naomi remained cautious. She remembered the lessons of her elders. Strangers could not be trusted, and the decisions of a single person could affect the safety and harmony of the whole tribe. Yet, Hayes seemed patient. He never shouted, never demanded, and never intruded. Instead, he simply observed, learned, and respected the boundaries of the land. Naomi found herself admiring his patience, even as she reminded herself to remain guarded. One morning, Naomi noticed Hayes sitting quietly near the stream, his sketchbook open in his lap. She watched him as he drew the shape of a distant peak, his eyes focused but gentle. The sun cast long shadows across the rocks, and the water shimmered like glass. Naomi felt a sudden impulse to speak to him, to ask why he returned again and again. She hesitated, remembering her mother's words about the importance of trust and careful choice. Finally, she stepped forward, her movements slow and deliberate. Hayes looked up, startled, but he did not move away. His eyes met hers, and there was a moment of quiet understanding. Naomi's voice was soft but steady. "Why do you come here?" she asked. "This land is not yours. It belongs to those who have lived in it for generations." Hayes paused, closing his sketchbook. "I know," he said quietly. "I do not wish to take it or claim it. I only wish to understand it, to see its beauty and to learn from it." There was honesty in his words, and Naomi felt a small flicker of trust. She did not step closer, but she did not turn away. Instead, she watched him carefully, noticing the sincerity in his eyes. Over the following days, the two began to exchange small conversations. Hayes would speak of the mountains, the rivers, and the plants, and Naomi would listen, occasionally offering her own knowledge. She spoke of the herbs that healed, the streams that nourished, and the wind that carried messages. Hayes listened with genuine interest, never interrupting, never dismissing her words. Naomi realized that he was learning not only from the land, but also from her. One afternoon, as they walked along a narrow path near the edge of a cliff, Hayes spoke of a life beyond the mountains. "I come from a place where the land is flat, and the sky stretches endlessly," he said. "I have seen towns and cities filled with people, and yet nothing feels as alive as these mountains." Naomi listened, her heart quiet but attentive. She had no desire to leave her home, but she could understand his longing for something familiar to him. He continued, "Sometimes I wonder if there is a life where people from different worlds can meet without fear, a life where respect and understanding matter more than power or control." Naomi thought about his words carefully. There was hope in his voice, a wish for connection, and yet she knew that the world beyond the mountains was complicated, filled with challenges her people had endured for generations. As the days turned into weeks, Hayes began to speak more openly about himself. He shared stories of his childhood, of the towns he had visited, and the books he had read. Nayeli listened, fascinated by the experiences he had seen, even as she remained aware of the differences between their worlds. She realized that he was not simply an outsider. He was someone trying to learn, to understand, and to bridge a gap that many had ignored. Still, there were moments when Nayeli felt the weight of caution pressing on her heart. She had heard of strangers who had promised safety and comfort, only to bring harm. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. Trust must be earned, not given freely. Nayeli knew that while Hayes seemed different, she could not allow herself to be swept away by curiosity or admiration alone. Her decisions were not just about her. They were about her people, her heritage, and the land that had nurtured them for generations. One quiet morning, Nayeli and Hayes sat together by the stream, watching the sunlight ripple on the water. Hayes turned to her, his expression earnest. "Nayeli," he said softly, "I do not want to frighten you. I only wish to know you and to understand the life you cherish so deeply." Nayeli considered his words carefully. She could sense the honesty in his tone, but she also felt the responsibility that weighed on her shoulders. She spoke slowly, choosing her words with care. "You may understand the land and perhaps even me, but you must know that my heart belongs here, to my people and to these mountains. I cannot leave them, and I cannot be swayed by promises of comfort or ease." Hayes nodded, listening without judgment. He did not press her, did not argue. Instead, he accepted her words, as if recognizing the strength and wisdom in her choice. In the days that followed, their bond grew, not as friends or lovers, but as two people learning from each other. Hayes respected Nayeli's space, and Nayeli began to see a man who valued knowledge, patience, and understanding. She realized that the mountains had not only shaped her, but had also influenced him, guiding him toward humility and respect. One evening, as the sun set behind the peaks, Hayes asked a question that lingered in the air. "Do you ever wonder what it would be like to see the world beyond these mountains?" Nayeli looked at the glowing sky, the shadows stretching across the hills. She felt a pull of curiosity, but also a firm tether to her roots. "I have seen the world through stories," she replied softly, "but my place is here. The mountains, the streams, and my people, they are my life." Hayes smiled, not with triumph but with understanding. He realized that some bonds could not be forced, some choices could not be swayed. Nayeli's life was her own, guided by her wisdom, her heart, and the lessons of her ancestors. And though he might have wished for a closer connection, he accepted the truth that some things were meant to remain untangled, cherished from a distance rather than possessed. As the days passed, Nayeli's respect for Hayes grew, not as a potential companion, but as a witness to the world she cherished. She saw his efforts to learn, his patience, and his quiet determination to honor the land. And Hayes, in turn, began to understand the strength and pride of Nayeli's spirit, the deep connection she held to her home, and the unyielding wisdom that guided her choices. By the end of the season, their interactions had become a pattern of shared understanding, quiet observations, and gentle conversation. Nayeli knew that she had glimpsed a world beyond the mountains, a world that could offer curiosity, learning, and connection. But she also knew that her life, her choices, and her loyalty were tied to the mountains and the people who had shaped her. Hayes had come into her world not to change it, but to learn from it. And in that, they both found a measure of respect and understanding that transcended distance, culture, and expectation. The days grew longer as the sun climbed higher in the sky, and the mountains seemed to glow with warmth. Nayeli moved through her village with purpose, carrying out her daily duties, yet the memory of Captain Samuel Hayes remained in her thoughts. She could not deny that his presence had left an impression, even as she reminded herself of the importance of caution. The lessons of her ancestors were always with her: wisdom, patience, and the courage to make decisions that honored her people. One morning, Nayeli found herself near a familiar clearing where she had often observed Hayes. The air was still, the soft hum of insects and the gentle rustle of leaves creating a peaceful rhythm. She saw him there, kneeling by the stream, sketching the flow of water and the curve of stones. He looked up briefly and noticed her, but he did not move. There was an understanding in his eyes, a quiet acknowledgement of the distance between them, and yet a desire to connect. Naeli approached slowly, her steps careful and deliberate. "You are here again," she said softly, not as a question but as an observation. Hayes smiled faintly. "I come to learn," he replied, "and to see the land through the eyes of someone who knows it better than anyone else." His words carried a humility that touched Naeli, yet she remained firm. She could not allow herself to be swayed by kindness or admiration alone. For weeks, their conversations deepened. Naeli shared the names of herbs, the patterns of the streams, and the songs of the wind that carried messages across the mountains. Hayes listened with respect, asking questions without pressure and absorbing her knowledge like a student of the land. Naeli began to notice a subtle change in him. He no longer spoke only of the world beyond, but of understanding and appreciating what was already present. She realized that he was not just learning about the mountains, he was learning from her. Yet, despite the growing connection, Naeli felt the weight of responsibility pressing on her heart. She remembered the stories of women in her tribe, women who had faced impossible choices and had remained steadfast. She thought of her ancestors, who had endured hardship without giving up their values or their freedom. Naeli knew that Hayes's presence, as gentle and respectful as it was, could never replace the loyalty she owed to her people and her home. One evening, as the sun began to set and the sky turned shades of orange and purple, Hayes spoke quietly. "Naeli," he said, "I admire your strength. You are wise, brave, and fiercely loyal. I have seen it in everything you do. And yet, I feel that there is a part of you that wonders what lies beyond these mountains." Naeli looked at the glowing horizon, the peaks outlined against the sky. She felt a tug of curiosity, but it was not enough to shake her resolve. "I have seen much in stories," she said softly, "and perhaps even glimpsed it through your eyes, but my life is here. My heart is with my people, with the mountains and the land that has nurtured us for generations. I cannot leave it behind, even for curiosity or comfort." Hayes nodded, understanding the depth of her words. He realized that some choices were not about desire, they were about responsibility, honor, and love for one's roots. Days turned into weeks, and Hayes continued to visit, always respectful, always patient. Naeli noticed that his respect for her boundaries never wavered. He did not push her to choose a different path or try to persuade her with promises of a different life. Instead, he honored her decisions, learning not just about the mountains, but about the quiet strength that guided her. Naeli, in turn, found herself seeing him in a new light, not as a stranger or a potential companion, but as a witness to her world, someone who sought to understand without taking. One morning, as they walked along a narrow ridge, Hayes stopped and looked out over the valley. "Naeli," he said, "I have traveled far and seen many lands, but none have moved me as much as these mountains, and none have taught me as much as you have. I wonder, do you ever wish for something beyond this place?" Naeli turned to him, her eyes steady. "I do not wish for more than what I have," she said. "This land, my people, and the life I know, they are enough. My strength comes from them." Hayes fell silent, absorbing her words. There was a respect in him that grew stronger with each passing day. He began to understand that Naeli's refusal to be swayed was not stubbornness, but courage. It was a choice rooted in love, loyalty, and wisdom. And though he may have hoped for a different connection, he accepted the truth. Some bonds could only exist as respect, admiration, and understanding, without demanding more. Over time, their relationship became a delicate balance of observation, conversation, and shared moments in the mountains. Naeli learned more about Hayes's world, its towns, rivers, and skies, but she always returned to the certainty of her own life. Hayes, in turn, learned from her resilience, her knowledge, and the traditions that had shaped her. They both realized that some connections did not need to be possessive or consuming. They could exist in mutual respect and appreciation. One afternoon, Nayeli noticed Hayes sketching the landscape with unusual care. She approached, curious. "Why do you draw so carefully today?" she asked. Hayes smiled faintly. "Because I want to capture it truthfully," he said. "Not just the mountains, but the feeling of them, the way the wind moves, the way the sunlight touches the rocks, and the way I have learned to see it from your eyes." Nayeli felt a warmth in her heart at his words. She realized that his understanding was growing, shaped not just by observation, but by the wisdom she shared. As the season progressed, Nayeli's admiration for Hayes grew, though it was different from friendship or affection. She admired his patience, his respect, and his willingness to learn. And Hayes, in turn, grew to admire Nayeli's courage, wisdom, and unwavering commitment to her people. It was a bond built on trust and understanding, a bond that did not demand compromise but honored individuality and strength. One evening, as the sky turned golden and the shadows lengthened, Hayes asked a question that lingered between them. "Nayeli, if I asked you to come with me to see the world beyond these mountains, what would you say?" Nayeli's eyes met his, steady and calm. She thought of the mountains, the streams, and the people she loved. "I would say no," she said firmly. "My life, my heart, and my loyalty are here. I cannot leave them behind." Hayes nodded, accepting her answer without argument. He realized that some choices were not negotiable and that Nayeli's refusal was not rejection of him, but affirmation of herself and her people. In that moment, he felt a deep respect, not just for her decision, but for the wisdom and courage that guided it. Nayeli's strength was a reflection of the land itself, unyielding, enduring, and full of quiet power. The following days were marked by a calm understanding between them. They shared stories, observations, and quiet moments in the mountains. Nayeli taught Hayes about the plants that healed, the patterns of the stars, and the songs of the wind. Hayes shared his sketches, describing the details he noticed and the beauty he found in her world. Each exchange was a lesson in respect, patience, and appreciation. Nayeli often thought of the elders' stories and the lessons of her ancestors. She realized that her interactions with Hayes were part of a larger story, a story of understanding between different worlds. She had faced the challenge of curiosity and temptation, and she had remained true to her heart and her heritage. And Hayes had learned that connection did not require possession, that respect and understanding could be the greatest gifts of all. As the sun set behind the mountains one evening, Nayeli stood quietly, watching the light fade across the peaks. Hayes was nearby, sketching silently, his presence calm and respectful. Nayeli felt a sense of peace, knowing that she had made her choice, honored her people, and remained true to herself. And she realized that sometimes, courage was not about action or adventure. It was about knowing who you are, standing firm in your decisions, and accepting the world as it is. In those quiet moments, Nayeli understood that the story of her life was unfolding, shaped by choices, loyalty, and the wisdom of the mountains. Hayes had come into her world not to change it, but to witness it. And in witnessing it, he had learned something that many never understood, that the strength of a person is measured not by the life they could leave behind, but by the life they choose to protect and honor. The mountains remained, steadfast and eternal, and so did Nayeli's resolve. She knew that her path was her own, guided by love, loyalty, and the wisdom of generations. Hayes's presence was a part of her story, a chapter of understanding and respect, but it would never define her. And in that, Nayeli found a quiet triumph, a victory of heart, mind, and spirit, witnessed only by the mountains and the wind that carried her story forward. The seasons began to change, and with them, the mountains seemed to breathe in a new rhythm. The days grew warmer, and the streams sparkled more brightly under the sunlight. Naomi moved through her daily routines with the same care and dedication she always had, yet the memory of Hayes remained a quiet presence in her mind. Their interactions had become a gentle rhythm, an unspoken understanding that neither would push boundaries, yet both learned from each other. One morning, Naomi noticed something different in the air. The winds carried a certain restlessness, as if the mountains themselves were preparing her for a new challenge. Hayes had arrived earlier than usual, and his gaze was thoughtful, as though he had something important to say. Naomi approached cautiously, keeping her distance, but there was a sense of anticipation in the quiet morning. "I have been thinking," Hayes said softly, his voice blending with the sound of the wind through the trees. "I have learned so much from you, from this land, and from the wisdom you carry. And yet, I realize that there is a part of the world I cannot fully understand without seeing it for myself. But I also know that my presence here may bring attention or even trouble." Naomi listened carefully. She understood his concern not for himself, but for the balance of the mountains and the safety of her people. She considered his words, weighing them carefully. She had always known that interaction with outsiders could be delicate. Her people had faced challenges from those who did not understand their ways. Naomi knew that her decisions could affect not only herself, but the harmony of her village. "You must be careful," she said gently. "The mountains watch and the land remembers. Your intentions may be honest, but others may not see them that way. You must respect the balance, or harm could come where none is wanted." Hayes nodded, appreciating her wisdom. "I understand," he said. "I will tread carefully, and I will honor your world as much as I can." There was a sincerity in his tone that moved Naomi. She realized that their connection was not about possession or closeness, but about understanding, respect, and learning from one another. She admired his patience, his willingness to see without taking, and his quiet determination to honor her guidance. As the days passed, their interactions became more thoughtful. Hayes asked questions not just about the land, but about her people's traditions, their songs, and their stories. Naomi shared what she could, choosing carefully what to reveal. She spoke of the patterns in the stars, the meanings behind certain songs, and the lessons passed down through generations. Hayes listened attentively, often asking gently for clarification, and always expressing gratitude for the knowledge she shared. One afternoon, as they walked along a shaded path near the river, Hayes spoke of his own reflections. "Naomi," he said quietly, "I have seen much in my life, but I have never met someone who carries such strength, wisdom, and courage. You teach me more than any book or lesson ever could, and I realize that understanding comes not from owning or controlling, but from observing, listening, and respecting." Naomi felt warmth in her heart at his words. It was rare to meet someone who sought understanding rather than possession, and she recognized the value in his presence. Yet, despite the growing mutual respect, Naomi remained cautious. She knew that admiration alone could not guide a life. Choices mattered, and loyalty to her people and her home was paramount. She often reflected on the stories of women in her tribe who had faced impossible decisions, choosing integrity over convenience, courage over ease. Naomi understood that her responsibility was not just to herself, but to the mountains, the streams, and the generations who had come before her. One evening, as the sky was painted with shades of orange and pink, Hayes approached her with a question that had been on his mind. "Naomi, do you ever feel torn between curiosity and loyalty, between seeing what lies beyond these mountains and remaining here with your people?" Naomi looked at the glowing peaks, the gentle streams, and the familiar paths that had shaped her life. "I feel it sometimes," she said softly, "but my heart has always known where it belongs. Curiosity is natural, but loyalty and love for what nurtures you are stronger. I cannot leave them behind, even for the unknown." Hayes fell silent, absorbing her words. He realized that her courage was not the absence of curiosity, but the presence of wisdom. Nayeli had looked at the world carefully, weighed her choices, and remained steadfast in her principles. There was a lesson in her strength, a lesson that went beyond admiration, beyond friendship, beyond understanding. It was a lesson in integrity, courage, and respect for one's roots. Over the next few weeks, Hayes became even more thoughtful in his actions. He carefully recorded his observations of the mountains, always ensuring that his presence left no mark on the land or disruption on the village. Nayeli noticed his care, and she felt a sense of quiet pride. He was learning not just from her teachings, but from the way she lived, the way she moved, and the way she respected the world around her. One afternoon, as they rested near the riverbank, Hayes asked a question that lingered in the gentle breeze. "Nayeli, have you ever wondered what your life would be like if the mountains were not here? If the streams and the forests were replaced by something different?" Nayeli smiled gently, shaking her head. "I do not need to wonder," she said. "The mountains, the land, and my people are my life. They give me strength, guidance, and purpose. I do not seek more because I already have what truly matters." Hayes nodded, a deep respect in his eyes. He realized that some things could never be replaced or taken away. The strength of a person came not from what they could leave behind or gain, but from what they chose to protect, honor, and nurture. Nayeli's life was a testament to that principle, and he felt privileged to witness it. As the days continued, their bond became a quiet but powerful connection. They shared stories, observations, and small lessons in patience and understanding. Nayeli taught Hayes about the changing seasons, the songs of birds, and the patterns of the sky. Hayes shared his sketches, showing the beauty he had captured, and the ways he had come to see the land through her eyes. Each interaction was a reminder that respect and learning could create connections stronger than any demand or expectation. One morning, Nayeli noticed a group of travelers passing near the edge of the mountains. They were distant and unfamiliar, moving quietly through the landscape. Nayeli felt a flicker of concern, but she remained calm, observing carefully. Hayes, noticing her attention, asked, "Do you worry about them?" Nayeli nodded slightly. "Yes, outsiders can bring change, not always for the better. We must remain cautious, and our choices must protect what we cherish." Hayes understood her concern. He realized that admiration and respect were not enough. Responsibility and action were also necessary to maintain balance and harmony. In the quiet that followed, Nayeli reflected on the weeks spent with Hayes. She realized that their connection had taught her something important. Understanding and respect were powerful, but they must always be accompanied by wisdom and loyalty. Her choices had shaped the path of their interactions, and her courage had guided them both. She felt a sense of pride and fulfillment, knowing that she had remained true to herself while fostering a bond built on mutual respect. As the sun set behind the peaks one evening, painting the sky in shades of gold and violet, Hayes turned to her. "Nayeli, I have learned more than I could have imagined," he said softly. "Not just about the mountains or the land or even the people, but about strength, courage, and the importance of living true to one's heart. I am grateful for the lessons you have shared." Nayeli smiled, a gentle warmth in her heart. She realized that he had grown through their interactions just as she had. That night, as Nayeli walked back to her village, she felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. She had faced curiosity, temptation, and admiration, yet she had remained steadfast. She had honored her people, the land, and her own heart. And though Hayes had become a part of her story, he had done so in a way that respected her choices and her world. Nayeli understood that true courage was not only in action, but in knowing one's values, standing firm, and allowing others to witness strength without trying to change it. The mountains continued to rise, timeless and steady, and so did Nayeli's resolve. She knew that her path was her own, guided by love, wisdom, and loyalty. Hayes's presence had been a chapter in her life, a chapter of understanding, respect, and quiet admiration, but it would never define her. And in that truth, Nayeli found a deep sense of peace, a quiet triumph, and a lesson that would remain with her forever. That strength, courage, and love for one's roots could shape not only a life but the world around it. The first light of dawn touched the peaks of the mountains, with soft gold, casting long shadows across the valley. Nayeli stood quietly on a familiar ridge, her eyes scanning the landscape she had always known. The streams shimmered, the wind whispered through the trees, and the mountains seemed to hum with life. She felt a sense of calm and clarity, knowing that the life she had chosen was the life that was right for her. Captain Samuel Hayes arrived shortly after, walking with his usual careful steps. He looked out over the valley, pausing to take in the scenery, as if committing every detail to memory. Nayeli watched him silently, her heart steady. Their relationship over the past months had been unique, built on respect, understanding, and patience. It had never been easy to navigate the delicate balance between curiosity, admiration, and loyalty. And now, at this moment, everything felt complete. Hayes turned to Nayeli and spoke softly. "The mountains are more beautiful than I ever imagined. And I have learned so much from the land and from you." There was a gentle sincerity in his voice that touched Nayeli, but she kept her eyes on the distant peaks, steady and calm. She understood that his words were honest, yet she also understood the truth of her own heart. It was here, among her people and her home, that she truly belonged. Over the weeks that followed, Hayes had been careful to show respect, never imposing or asking for more than what Nayeli was willing to give. He had learned that admiration could exist without ownership, that understanding could exist without demanding change, and that respect could form a bond stronger than any promise or gesture. Nayeli had taught him more than he could have anticipated, not just about the mountains, the streams, and the plants, but about patience, courage, and integrity. One morning, Nayeli and Hayes sat by the riverbank, the sunlight reflecting on the water in sparkling patterns. Hayes looked at her thoughtful. "Nayeli," he said, "I have traveled far, seen cities, towns, and lands beyond imagination. Yet I have learned that the strength of a person is not measured by what they see or gain, but by what they choose to protect and honor." Nayeli met his gaze, a small smile touching her lips. "You have learned well," she said softly, "and that is what matters most." The bond between them had grown quietly, without rushing or expectation. It was a bond built on understanding, respect, and a shared appreciation for the land and its lessons. Nayeli had realized that Hayes's presence in her life was not meant to change her, but to witness her courage and wisdom. And Hayes had learned that true admiration means accepting someone fully, without trying to alter their path. As the days passed, Nayeli's thoughts often wandered to the future, not only her own, but the future of her people and the land that had nurtured them for generations. She understood that life would present challenges, choices, and moments of uncertainty. Yet she also knew that she had the strength, wisdom, and guidance to face them. Her ancestors' lessons were alive within her, and she felt a quiet pride in the path she had chosen. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange, pink, and purple, Hayes turned to her with a question that had lingered in his heart. "Nayeli, will you teach me how to carry this respect and understanding beyond these mountains? Will you help me remember the lessons you have shared?" Nayeli looked at him, thoughtful. She realized that the knowledge she had shared was not only for him, but for anyone who wished to learn the importance of respect, patience, and loyalty. "I will," she said, "but remember, the land and the people you leave behind will always need your care and attention as well. Respect is not only about learning, it is about living it every day." Hayes nodded, absorbing her words. He realized that the lessons he had learned from Nayeli went far beyond observation. They were principles to guide his life, values that could shape his decisions and interactions wherever he went. Nayeli had shown him the power of quiet strength, integrity, and loyalty, and he felt grateful to have witnessed it firsthand. As the season turned toward late summer, Nayeli and Hayes continued to share moments in the mountains. They walked along familiar paths, observed the changes in the streams, and listened to the songs of the wind. Each day brought new understanding, yet the core of their connection remained the same: respect, admiration, and patience. Nayeli knew that her choice to remain true to her people and her home was unwavering, and Hayes accepted that fully. One morning, Nayeli noticed that the village was preparing for a gathering. Families were coming together to celebrate the changing season, sharing food, stories, and songs. The elders sat in a circle, passing down lessons and traditions, while children ran and played among the trees. Nayeli felt a sense of belonging and pride. She realized that her life, her decisions, and her loyalty were all part of a larger story, a story that connected her to the mountains, her people, and the generations that had come before. Hayes watched the village from a respectful distance, observing the interactions and the harmony of the community. He saw the pride in Nayeli's eyes as she moved among her people, offering guidance, support, and care. He understood that her strength came from her roots, and that the wisdom she carried was a reflection of the land itself. He felt a deep sense of respect, knowing that some connections could exist without possession, that admiration could be powerful even when it did not demand closeness. As the sun set that evening, Hayes and Nayeli walked to a quiet clearing overlooking the valley. The sky was painted with soft shades of pink and gold, and the air carried the gentle scent of the mountains. Hayes turned to her, his voice soft and sincere. "Nayeli, I will leave soon to continue my travels. But I will carry the lessons you have taught me, the strength you have shown me, and the understanding you have shared. I will remember these mountains, and I will honor your teachings wherever I go." Nayeli nodded, feeling a quiet pride and peace. "I know you will," she said. "And remember, the mountains and the land will always be here, watching, listening, and reminding us of what is important. Honor it, and you will carry wisdom with you always." Hayes smiled, understanding the depth of her words. He realized that the greatest lessons in life were often not found in books or travels, but in witnessing courage, integrity, and loyalty in those who lived by their values. The morning of his departure arrived. Hayes packed his belongings carefully, ensuring he left nothing behind that could disturb the land or the village. Nayeli stood at the edge of the ridge, watching him with calm eyes. She felt no sadness, only a quiet sense of fulfillment. Their time together had been meaningful, teaching both of them lessons that would last a lifetime. Hayes had grown, learned, and observed, while Nayeli had remained steadfast, wise, and true to herself and her people. Before leaving, Hayes turned to her one last time. "Nayeli, thank you for your patience, your guidance, and your courage. I will never forget what you have shared, and I will carry it with me always." Nayeli looked at him, her gaze steady and clear. "And I will continue to honor the mountains, the streams, and my people. That is the path I have chosen, and it will always guide me." With a respectful bow and a final glance at the mountains, Hayes began his journey beyond the peaks. Nayeli watched him disappear into the distance, feeling a sense of completion. She knew that their connection would remain in memory and respect, a quiet chapter in both of their lives that had shaped them profoundly. The mountains stood eternal behind her, the streams flowed gently, and the wind carried her story onward, as it always had. In the days and years that followed, Nayeli's life continued as it had always been, rooted in the mountains, the traditions of her people, and the wisdom of generations. She shared stories with the children, taught lessons of patience and courage, and carried the legacy of those who had come before her. The mountains remained her home, her protector, and her witness, holding the memory of the stranger who had once come to learn, and the lessons they had shared together. And though Hayes was gone from the mountains, The impact of their time together lingered quietly in her heart. Nayeli had faced curiosity, choice, and challenge, and had remained true to herself and her people. She had demonstrated that strength is measured not by conquest or control, but by integrity, loyalty, and courage. Her story became part of the oral history of the tribe, a tale of a woman who chose her people, her land, and her heart, and who taught others the quiet power of living true to one's values. The mountains rose, timeless and steady, and so did Nayeli's resolve. She understood that life would continue to bring choices and challenges, but she was prepared. She had learned that respect, understanding, and courage could create bonds as strong as any promise. And as she looked out over the valley, the wind carrying whispers through the trees, she knew that her story, her choices, and her heart would be remembered by her people, by the land, and by the generations yet to come.